Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. And before we get going here, I wanted to shout out a couple people sort of responsible for this video and kind of inspiring me to do a Spawn video kind of quicker than I had planned. So Messenger Comics on Twitter, I went and checked over their YouTube, and they have some cool voices, and particularly a Spawn voice. So definitely go over to YouTube if you're interested in their YouTube if you're interested in voice acting. And also our guy AML on our comments, who's been commenting so much on our channel, one of our first original fans. He also has a YouTube channel, with 400 or 500 subscribers as well. He's doing a really good job over there, and he's really on top of contests. So a lot of other YouTubers have contests as well from comic books. And he also reviews comic books too, so there's a little bit of that in there too. So check out AML's YouTube and Messenger Comics' YouTube. But getting into the Spawn issues for today, I wanted to focus on Spawn Newsstand issues, and I got a couple other sort of bonus picks as well. But Spawn Newsstand, I think if you really love Spawn and you really want to sort of gather a really good collection of Spawn items, Spawn Newsstand issues I think are the way to go, besides the direct issues. So if you don't, just to kind of give a background a bit on Newsstand versus direct issues, this is a Spawn #1 in the Newsstand edition. So the way you could tell basically is just this UPC barcode. And back when Spawn came out in 1992, comic printing was just basically at its peak, comic and sport card printing. So there are so many Spawn #1s in the direct issue, and I do have a 9.8 here of the direct version. You noticed here no UPC code. And so there were so many Spawn #1s back in the day, and on average about 20% of issues printed are Newsstand issues. So out of all of those, Spawn #1s back in 1992 that came out, only about 20% of them had this UPC code. And because they're newsstands, they don't go directly to a comic store. So a lot of the times they're on, literally stands in convenience stores and, Indigo or Chapters or whatever it might be. So in general, they're not as in good shape as well. So yeah, those are the kind of two factors that make newsstand editions usually about like 4 or 5 times the price of a direct version of the exact same comic. So a good example here is Spawn #1. I'll bring the 9.8 white pages in. Spawn #1 9.8 white pages you can grab in US dollars for about $100. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, depending on the deal. Like looking on the CGC census, 53% of all Spawn #1s are 9.8s. That's a super high ratio. So Spawn #1s there's a lot of them, and they're in good shape. So for like a collection item, that's not really the best. You always are looking for something a little bit more rare, something that hasn't been printed a lot, something there's not a lot of out there. That makes it more of a collection item. So for example, this about $100 US for Spawn #1 direct. In the newsstand version of this book, in the 9.8 white pages, Spawn #1 newsstands sell consistently for $400. I've seen $400 ones sell in a buy it now for $400 US like 4 or 5 times within the past 6 months to a year. And that's a lot for comic books. A lot of times, and especially in buy it now, is that depends what the comic is, but a lot of times those will sit for months and months and months until someone purchases them. Whereas usually Spawn #1s, if it's $399 US with a decent shipping rate, they're gone within a week or two. So Spawn #1's a really popular issue if you're a really serious Spawn collector, and maybe you're thinking about it as coming from an investment perspective, like you want these books to be worth a little bit more in 10 years. I would totally recommend to get the Spawn Newsstand #1 and not the Spawn Direct number 1. Obviously, it's 4 times as expensive. This is about 100. The newsstand version is about 400. But you know, again, if you want, if you're thinking about it from a collection investment item, definitely go for the newsstand. If you just have, you know, a nostalgic connection and, you know, you're not, that's kind of out of your budget, that 400, then Spawn number 1 in the Direct for $100 I think is also a great buy too. You know, because, you know, awesome pride of ownership to have a super mint Spawn number 1. So yeah, depending on your budget, I totally recommend both. But again, on the census for this Spawn number 1, what was there? There's 4,810 Spawn number 1s in the 9.8. So not very rare at all. Again, you know, we did a Carnage video yesterday. I showed one of my Carnage comics, and there was 2,900 or so of those, and that was like, I thought, crazy. Like, wow, there's so many of them. Well, there's 4,810. So there's so many Spawn number 1s in the Direct. That's why it's only $100. But you know, still a really good buy, as I said. If you're serious though, go for newsstands. You know, some other books I would recommend in the newsstand is also Spawn number 2 in the newsstand. That's a really good collector item. About the same price as Spawn number 1, maybe a little bit less. I know there's some people trying to get more and to buy it now, but if you can find an auction, I think that would probably go for about $300 to $350, whereas a Spawn number 1 would go for about $350 to $400. And this is talking only newsstand versions in the 9.8s. So other issues that you could look at in Spawn, there's Spawn number 9 that has the first Angela and a Jim Lee poster. That's sort of the other main key, I would say, in Spawn number 9. That one in the newsstand, I think in general almost goes for about the same price as a number 1, maybe even more in the newsstand. Just sort of depending on the auction, depending on how much you want it. If you want it now, then, you know, maybe you have to pay up an extra 50 or 100. But if you wait, that would probably go in an auction for about, yeah, I would say 300 to 350 US. So number 9, kind of a lesser known issue. Spawn number 16 is the first Greg Capullo Spawn. I think that's a pretty cool issue to even, you know, if you can pick it up in the newsstand as well. You know, that's on eBay for like literally $3. So in a newsstand, usually those type of sort of non-key issues go for about $20, $20 to $25, depending on the seller and, you know, depending on a lot of things. But yeah, Spawn number 16, first Greg Capullo Spawn. That's a bit of kind of an underappreciated. Not a lot of people know what issue is Greg Capullo's first Spawn. So that's a decent one. Spawn number 18 and Spawn number 21 are low distribution titles, and I've always liked those as well. So you know, those low distribution titles in the newsstand I think would be really good buys too. You know, personally with Spawn, I really love the sort of number 50 to 100 range, and there's a lot of amazing like Greg Capullo covers and Mcfarlane kind of dual covers during that time. I totally recommend if you're a really serious Spawn collector and you wanted to go after some non-keys in that 50 to 100 range, just buying really cool covers in the newsstand version, I think is a really good way to go about you know, buying and collecting some Spawn books. But if, you know, if you're not sort of, if you just want to buy maybe 1 or 2 Spawn books, I would totally recommend Spawn number 1 and Spawn number 2. Spawn number 1, first Spawn, first Simmons. Spawn number 2, first Violator. And if you can get both of those in the newsstand, like that's, to me, that would like complete a pretty awesome Spawn collection. You know, personally, I have the ungraded Spawn 1 newsstand. But looking for a Spawn 1 newsstand in the 9.8 white pages, and also looking for Spawn number 2 in the 9.8 white pages newsstand version. I don't want to buy the direct versions. You know, I got a Spawn number 1 direct version, and I think that's enough for the directs. They're as a collector, I consider myself a pretty serious collector. So yeah, the directs, there's just so many of them, and as a collection item, it's just not really worth it. So yeah, I'm looking for a Spawn 1 newsstand and a Spawn 2 newsstand in the 9.8 white pages. But getting to some alternatives, because Obviously, Spawn was created and drawn by Todd Mcfarlane. A lot of the first issues, he did kind of everything, the story, the art, and the cover. But for me, a really good choice, and sort of what I kind of term and tell some of my comic book friends is the real Spawn #1, is Batman 423 in the CGC 9.8 white pages. This is the classic Batman Todd Mcfarlane cover. He only did a couple other covers in the detective run, his Batman detective run, and those covers aren't nearly as cool as this one. So this is really, I do have that detective, the first Todd Mcfarlane Batman detective, can't remember, 5 something. I have that in the CGC 9.8 white pages too. I easily could have brought that out, but Batman 423 is kind of a completely different animal. Such an amazing cover. So cool, colors are awesome. It's got the classic Todd McFarlane circle for pretty much the first time for a Todd McFarlane comic, or one of the first times anyway. But yeah, to me this is sort of Spawn before Spawn came out. So this came out in 1988, Spawn in 1992. McFarlane's kind of on record as like he created Spawn when he was a kid, like a teenager. It was kind of his hero that he created very young when he was learning to draw. So he would have known about Spawn personally during this time. And yeah, I think just, the eyes that are kind of whited out and his whole face is just shadowed out, that's so Spawn. Plus like the cape that kind of has its own life to it, that's completely Spawn too. Yeah, there's so many elements to Spawn in this sort of, 5 to 6 years before Spawn came out. So yeah, personally, the reason I have 2 of these, 2 9.8s, is I sort of, instead of buying a Spawn #1 newsstand, I really wanted to just grab a couple Batman 423s. This is pretty much my favorite issue from when I was young. Yeah, Spawn before Spawn came out, 4 or 5 years before. So many, cool, great colors. Again, the circle in the background, which is like so Todd McFarlane. So many classic elements to this book. And on the CGC census, it's really collectible. It looks really good on the census. So yeah, Batman 423, 17% of all Batman 423s graded are 9.8s. But the best part is 81. There's only 81 of Batman 423s in the 9.8 in the blue label. So you're getting like a 1 of 81 item. And some of those are probably not even white pages, so it's probably like more of like a 1 in 75 item, which is a really cool, I think a really awesome ratio to collect in and invest in. To have something that's like 1 of 75 is a really awesome ratio as a collector, and to have it be a classic Todd McFarlane cover, whereas like, for example, Incredible Hulk 340, there's like 900 of those, I believe, or maybe even over 1,000 of those. Amazing Spider-Man 300, there's 900 and something of those. So, all these other sort of classic Todd McFarlane keys have a lot of them out there. Whereas this one's a little bit lesser known, but to me, I think way cooler. And there's only 81 out there. So, to me, as an investment, as a collection item, if you're a Todd McFarlane fan, this is like basically the first book that I would buy as a super Todd McFarlane fan. If I was buying 9.8 white pages of Todd McFarlane's work, I would buy Batman 423 as my first book. And again, yeah, it's just so cool, but at the same time looks really good on the census. And yeah, it's one of those books too that just in the last couple of years it's quite perking up. I have the last 3 Overstreet price guides, and in those guides, like it just keeps going up like about $10 each year. So there's not like a first appearance or anything on this book. So originally it was just basically a normal issue, but with the Todd McFarlane cover, and he only did a few Batman covers, this one being the coolest by far, it's just more and more becoming a key issue, and I see that trend continuing. And because there's only 81 of them, I think it's one you want to buy now. And it's not like Incredible Hulk 340 where there's 1,000 of those, and even like a a Batman 316 or that whole Todd McFarlane Spider-Man era, where there's usually at least anywhere from like 600 to over 1,000 of each copy in the 9.8s. Only 81 of these, so really rare. That's why I have two. Yeah, and this is in the first print too as well. You want to get the first print. There's a second and a third print as well. Just get the first print. This is the issue that most collectors are lusting after, and they want it. Even better if you get a first print in the UPC code down here. That's very rare. Personally, I haven't seen any of those in the last year, so yeah, if you ever see a Newsstand copy of this, because yeah, these go for about $400 to $500 US on auction. Buy it nows get up there. People are trying to get $600, even $700 for these as well. So it's quickly getting up there, and I only see that continuing over time because of how popular Todd McFarlane is, and the fact that there's only 81 of these. So that would be my alternative pick for Spawn, and that's my more expensive alternative pick. And this one here is the Spawn Batman crossover with the Frank Miller story and Todd McFarlane cover and art. This is kind of my affordable Spawn pick, I would say. In the 9.8 white pages, you can usually find this issue for about $100, maybe even a little bit less. But being a Batman Dark Knight's Returns, I'm a huge fan of that issue. This kind of cover swipes that. You got Spawn Batman, and Frank Miller does a story, which is even way cooler, I think. It's one thing to kind of just do a cover homage of it, but to have Frank Miller do the story is really cool. So for like, yeah, 90 to $100 I've seen this for, maybe even less too, if someone was just trying to get rid of it, trying to get some money or something, if they're cash strapped, you can find this for really cheap. And I think, yeah, this is a really good one as a bit of a cheaper alternative, and just as cool though. Spawn Batman crossover with Frank Miller and the Batman Dark Knight's Return cover homage. Yeah, really kind of underappreciated issue that not a lot of people have their eye on if they're a Spawn fan. So Spawn Batman crossover is my other pick. But yeah, that'll do it for this video today. And yeah, so for me, I'm on the lookout for Spawn number 1 and Spawn number 2 in the Newsstand in the 9.8 white pages. I hope I buy those in the next 6 months to a year. I'll definitely do like an unboxing video for that. So stay tuned. But thanks so much for watching the video, guys. A lot of other ideas here for videos, and got a lot of titles written down, and I should be doing about 4 or 5 videos a week, and hoping to kind of do a lot of consistent content on the channel. But yeah, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Hit the bell so you get notifications. I'm doing videos almost every day at this point, so it's good to kind of get that daily notification. So make sure you hit that bell. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. Please subscribe. Thanks again, and I will see you on the next video.